Hello, all, and welcome back to the Blind Horse Project podcast. For those of you just joining, the Blind Horse Project aims to bring awareness and education about our equine friends after they lose their eyesight. In many rescues across the USA, if a horse is brought in that is blind, they are immediately put down without thought of rehabilitation or being put back to work. Similarly, most equine boarding facilities, which is how the majority of people house their horses, do not accept blind horses for board. And oftentimes, when an owner's beloved horse goes blind, the first thing that they hear from the professionals and the people around them is often the recommendation to put their horse down. The Blind Horse Project aims to bring the happy, actual reality to light in the public eye, that our horses can far more easily adjust and thrive than we give them credit for. We argue that our horses do not need to be euthanized after they lose their eyesight, and that once adjusted, our blind horses can come back to work as family horses, as competition horses, and even as therapy horses. We argue this by bringing the little-known but large community of blind horse owners into the limelight and give them a platform to share their journeys with the world. This is the Blind Horse Project. And today, we are joined by Kalei, a barrel racer from Maryland, as she talks about her horse, Saylor.
Hi, Kalei. Thanks for joining us on the Blind Horse Project podcast. How are things going today?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I know we have kind of gathered together to talk about your journey, but can you give us a little bit of backstory on yourself?
I've pretty much grown up with horses. As soon as I was out of the hospital and born, I was around them. My grandparents had a horse rescue, and I was active in that. I was riding before I could walk. My family shortly took over the rescue, and we ran that for a while, for about 6 or 7 years. And then we also had a boarding facility, and I teamed up with any of our riding instructors or trainers that we had on board with us and just kind of followed them around. I took lessons with some people, and otherwise I just kind of would watch videos on my free time, and I did it on my own. I did eventing for 12 years and then have been in barrels for rodeo for about 8.
That's fantastic. It's so cool that you had such a rich background in your horsemanship. I think that's about how a lot of us end up starting out with horses. For sure, we end up following our instructors around. Okay, so how did you end up owning your blind horse?
So we have a local auction here. I'm in Maryland, specifically the Frederick County area, and we have a local auction in Thurmont that I went to as a kid, and it was kind of what we did on our Friday nights. That was what we did for fun, and they have an annual New Year's auction, and it's recently under new ownership, and they would post the horses on their Facebook pages of the ones that would come in and kind of give you a description on them. And I was looking for my next rodeo partner, as my other one was recently retired and I was out of a horse, so I was looking to possibly fill it, but didn't plan on getting one there. I kind of just went with friends, not anticipating to bid on anything. I had saw his ad online, but at the time it was right when the market for horses was going up pretty high. And so the way his ad read, I figured he was going to go way above what I was willing to spend for a horse there. So we were watching him go down the alley, and I knew his number, so I knew we were getting close. So I went up and sat down, and I had a number for kind of just 'cause, not really for him. I was using it, my friend's number, and I saw him come down the alley, and he was terrified. He had his sight at the time, so he could see when he was here at the auction. And he, at what I had thought had never been down an auction alley, and I later found out he had been down quite a few. He plowed down the alley, ran a few people over, and the bidding kind of stopped, and it wasn't very high, so I threw my number up, and I was the last one to throw my number up, and I ended up coming home with him.
Okay, cool. So what ended up happening after that? How did he adjust when you brought him home, and how did he end up turning blind? Like, what's the whole journey there?
So I brought him home, and he was perfectly fine. He was pretty skinny when I got him. He probably needed a good 150 pounds. So I knew when I brought him home, he was strictly going to be on what I thought was just to gain weight, just to get acclimated for at least 30 days. So he was quarantined for a full month, and that's when I had decided, okay, he'd gained enough weight, so I moved him onto another property. I had went out one night just to go check on him, see how he was, and I noticed his eye was really watery and he was quite frantic, which was not common for him. I mean, he had been used to being handled daily, multiple times a day, and he acted like he didn't know what was going on. And at our rescue, we had a previous horse get diagnosed with uveitis, so I knew what it looked like. And as soon as I brought him into the barn, got a flashlight and kind of put a light into his eye, I had a pretty good feeling. I knew what it was. I called my vet up. It was about 11 o'clock at night. I sent her pictures. I described to her how I was. She was quite concerned. So they came down. They ran their tests on him. They stained his eye. They looked in his eye. And within an hour of them being there, I had got the diagnosis that he had uveitis. I asked how it happened so quickly, and they told me from the way his eye was that this is something he always had. It was a genetic thing, which he had flare-ups before. You can tell if they've had previous flare-ups, which he did, but they would just flare up, and whatever medication or treatment previous owners were doing on him had worked, so it would come back down. So he had a flare-up. I said, okay, how long are we looking at to decide if this is going to be something that he permanently has? I had about a 50-50 chance of getting his sight back. They said, we'll know in about a month and a half when we recheck him. I said, okay, took him back to the quarantine facility I had him at. And he was on strict stall rest there. He would go out during the day, but only when I was with him, so I could supervise him because he didn't know what was going on around him. He was on medications 4 times a day. So it started at 5 o'clock in the morning, and his latest medication would get given to him by like 9 o'clock at night. And it was just a lot of hoping and praying. It was a lot of, he didn't trust me. I'd only had him for a month before I got that call and told the vet what was going on. So we didn't really have a bond. He wasn't fully trusting in me. So we really started our bond once I started the treatment of being out there like 3-4 times a day. He did it right in the dead of winter, which was not the most ideal time because the roads were not always the best, but we figured it out. I had the vet back out a month and a half later, praying that the medication had worked and he had his sight. She came out and she had a facial expression that I could tell probably wasn't good news. She had looked at me and she said, his vision's gone. There's no getting it back. This is something permanent. I said, okay. And we kind of just went from there. I brought him back to my personal facility, and we kind of he had to learn new things. He loaded right up in the trailer when I first got him to, it took us about an hour to get him in the trailer. The sound of the trailer just terrified him. And then getting him back home it was lots of halter on a lead line, walking around, learning different cues so he knew where things was, a very strict routine so he could figure out kind of what to expect every day and kind of where to meet, figure out where the gates were, the water, the hay, and get used to his herd mates because I didn't keep him by himself. I kept him with 2 of our low level, easygoing kind of geldings, and they kind of helped him out. They were older and gave him some company. And I didn't have any expectations that we'd rodeo again. I had a pretty good feeling that he was probably just going to retire and he was just going to live his life out in the field for the rest of his life with me. I had decided about a month into him finally getting comfortable with his routine that maybe I'll try to start riding him again. So a month after that, I decided to throw a saddle on him for the first time. He was fine with it. At that point, he had full trust in me. He knew my voice. He knew nothing bad was going to happen when he was with me. So he was perfectly fine. I put him in the indoor. I got on him, and it was a lot of, he's a very sensitive horse, so he's really, really sensitive to like leg pressure. So that was really easy to kind of get him riding, as he was already used to leg pressure. He already knew what that meant. So that was the easy part. But the next part was, is he ever going to set foot in the arena again to compete? I worked with a few trainers. One trainer turned us down, said he's 20 years old. It's kind of a waste of time. I mean, he was already pretty blown up. He knew walk and go. There was really no in between, which was a big difficulty for us, because here I am trying to teach him. He can't see, so he has to fully go off of what I'm trying to tell him to do and show him what to do and speak him through it, because I voice cued him a lot, and he's also solely off of leg. One trainer turned us down, which was fine. I understood her point, but I wanted to at least give it a shot. So I did it on my own. I had a couple help me once I got my cues down. And we decided, okay, we're going to try to reteach him the barrel pattern. It was really hard our first few actual goes. After the walkthroughs were easy, but adding speed was really hard. Once we started adding speed, it started getting really difficult. He didn't really know when to like stop. He didn't know when to turn. He didn't know how tight to turn. He didn't understand any of that. So it was kind of just, I had taken a break for 2 weeks to try to figure out, am I doing, like, is this the right thing for him? Should I just call it? But then after that 2 weeks, when I got on him again, he, for some reason, all of a sudden kind of remembered, I guess in a way, what his job used to be. He'd rodeoed his whole life out in Mississippi from previous owners, so he grew up doing it. And I guess all of a sudden that little break, and once he sort of figured out what I was trying to do, it was pretty easy from there. He is kind of a horse only I can ride. I've had a couple other people on him when it comes to competing, because most people, they don't know how sensitive and touchy a blind horse can be. And if you overcorrect or over cue, or if they feel like you're frustrated, it usually just blows up in a mess. So I had a couple friends get on him. They did well on him. So I said, okay, well, and I got him in 2021. So in 2022, we decided we were going to go do our first race together. Our very first raid out the back, I had no expectations, but just a calm, easy, clean run. And he came home winning that race, or one of our local jackpots that day. And it kind of just went up from there. It was, he knew the sound of the trailer. He knew when we were going to run. He knew when we started getting other horses gathered, kind of what that meant. And it turned in every weekend he was hauling out, and he just, off the bat, was just winning at all of these. And I'd get questions like, oh, like, where'd you get him? Like, what's his story? And I slowly started telling people, and at our local rodeos and jackpots, his story just kind of spread from people to people, and he's kind of just one of the horses now that when people come into the arena, if you're a regular person, you know his story. He's one that people like to watch, just because you don't see many blind horses in rodeo, especially winning the way he does, and handling it as calmly as he does. Loud noises, once he trusted me and we started hauling out, were never a problem for him. I mean, bulls scare him a little bit now, but other than that, he's not scared of anything. I mean, we go to the fairs, we go to lots of rodeos, and they set fireworks off. You get the loud crowds, you get people and kids running up to them out of nowhere, and he's just, it doesn't faze him at all. I've had little kids get on him right after I'm done running him, and they walk him around with me, and he could not care at all. And it's his job. And I went from, I thought he was going to go into retirement, to now I think I'm going to have to just figure out, and he's going to have to let me know when he's ready, because he absolutely loves his job.
That is really, really cool. So any super special moments that you can share, anything kind of come to mind immediately?
We were at probably our local rodeo, and you get a lot of the kids who stand on the fence as we're warming up, just kind of watching. A lot of these kids, they don't know anything about rodeo. It's just they see it and it becomes their little dream that that's what they want to do when they grow up, or that's something they want to try. And there are some kids standing on the fence, and Saylor, he's not one I really have to warm up too much. Otherwise he gets kind of antsy and over prepared. So I usually bring him to the side of the fence and let the kids pet him. And there was this group of kids standing at the fence, and they asked me if this was him, and I said, yeah. I said, how do you guys know him? And I didn't know he had ended up in the newspaper from a previous rodeo. And it was just really touching to see just there were people I didn't even know, and they knew him, they knew me, and they knew what he was going through.
Yeah, that definitely seems like it'd be a super, super special moment as well. I mean, for you guys to have come such a long way from where you rescued him at auction to bringing him back into work. I mean, that's just, honestly, that's really amazing. Kudos for you. And I know that a lot of us with blind horses, we do end up getting pushed back as far as trainers go. So it is something that it takes a special person who really loves their horse to want to work through it.
Yeah. It's really hard because you get people who are actively in the industry, and if they're looking like I was for a new partner, usually if you hear a horse is blind, you're usually not taking your chance on them. They're kind of ones that just get passed over. And I'm guilty to say that if at the auction I heard he was blind, I probably would not have taken my chance on him. But since having him, he's the second horse I've ever owned that I'm like, yeah, he's going to stay with me for the rest of my life. And I will absolutely never pass over a blind one again, because he's just shown and proved that he's better than some horses that can see. And they don't need sight to be able to do what every other horse can do in this industry.
I fully agree. Okay, so what are your future plans with him?
So he just turned 24, which some people that's really old. Some people it's right there in their prime. This year we're going to see how it goes. He just came off of he pulled a muscle in his leg about 2 months ago. And tore part of the muscle. So he's in just some rehab for that, just kind of on some stall rest. He'll start getting legged back up in a month as long as the vet clears that the tear is healed. And then we're just probably going to end up competing again, because he's come through everything else that I thought would stop him for the year, and it didn't. So as long as he keeps that same mindset and he shows that he can handle it and it doesn't affect him physically or mentally, he will compete this year. And then after this year, I always say I'm probably going to retire him, but every year he seems to show that he's not ready for retirement. And he's one of those horses, it really upsets him to sit in the field and stay home while the others haul out. So whether he hauls out with the others and kind of just stays at the trailer and is a companion for them at other rodeos and shows that we go to, or he hauls back out after this year but only competes a little bit throughout the year and not every weekend, or whether he just goes completely retired will just depend on how this year goes for him. But he's competed in rodeo his whole life. I connected the dots. When I got him from my auction, I contacted the person who brought him and then who he bought him off of. And he had been through quite a few auctions. And to find out he competed most of his life in Mississippi competitively against top of the top, he's been doing it for quite some time. So it's kind of something that he loves his job. But as the owner, I know he loves his job, but sometimes I feel like I'll need to make the call for him. And he'll just kind of learn to be a horse, learn to relax, just do trails, do some light riding, just do some putzing around the farm. But we really don't know. Definitely after this year, he'll likely just whether go into full or semi-retirement, whether he's fully done competing or he'll just haul out a little bit after this year. But this year we're going to try to go to a lot of the places we maybe haven't made it to in the past, and not set any high expectations, even though he always seems to set the bar higher than I think he should, and just kind of see how he handles it and just let him do his job. I want it to be fun for him. I never want it to become something he dislikes.
Absolutely. And that definitely is a balance there for sure. And it's a call that's really hard. You're probably going to hear a lot of different opinions from a lot of people, but honestly, I think that generally between horse and owner, when the owner gets a gut feeling, it's usually correct.
Yeah, it's really hard. You get the people who are in awe that, oh my God, he can't see. It's amazing that he's still competing, let alone just as calm and as just normal he seems. And then you get the people who are usually people you compete with, and sometimes they're just bystanders who watch. And you get the people who kind of in a way think it's not a good thing, and it's in a way you're hurting the horse, or it's just not fair to them, and that it's something that if you hear that a horse is blind, they shouldn't be messed with anymore. They should kind of just sit out in the field. And you get the people that are angry with you that you shouldn't be doing this with them, and they think it causes too much stress. And those are the people I invite out the most to come and see him, because I've had people who maybe aren't the biggest fan that he's still out competing with the loud noise and the crowds and a lot of just chaos that goes on, especially in the rodeo world, that he sees on a weekend basis. And they've come out and they've seen him, and some of them have turned into friends and realize that when he's home and sitting, it's not this happy place out in the arena it is, and out competing it is. You can tell how much he absolutely loves his job, and he knows when he's done a good job, and his biggest thing is just to please, even if he can't see it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting that kind of stigma does come up. I mean, I'd understand to a point when people, not a whole lot of people understand blind horses. Not a lot of people own them, so they don't really understand that they can do just as much as any other horse can. We might need to approach them in a different way training wise, but once they understand their job, they really do love it.
Correct.
I'm definitely not, like, Blink and I did not compete on the same level as you. Blink is my blind horse, by the way. We mostly went to local shows, but honestly, you could tell that when he started to get the hang of it, he started to really love it. A couple of the times back when I was teaching lessons, my students would get on him, and there was a really, really funny moment because Blink is completely blind, right? So I had to tell my students, don't put his feet in the sand by the arena. He wants to go in the arena and do his run. Don't put his feet in the sand. You'll pull on the reins and he won't stop, because a lot like your horse, my blind guy tends to only listen to me for some things. Mind you, Blink would never take off with them at all. But what he did do was walk slowly and determinedly into the fence.
Yeah. So,
well, my student was saying, whoa, stop.
It really, I feel like, it's a routine for him. I mean, Saylor, he can go from having people who have never ridden on him and they're just messing around on him, and he's just calm, cool as can be, but he knows the atmosphere he's in, and he really goes off of kind of the vibe and the atmosphere that he's in. So he knows when he's just taking care of a kid, and he knows when it's time to compete. When it's time to compete, he's a completely different horse. I mean, he's in his zone. You're not stopping him. If you're in his way, you better move, because he's there to do his job, and he's going to do it whether it's one way or another. And then when he's home, he's the most cuddly, just hang out, chill, just kind of hang his head over the fence and let you climb all over him, under him type of guy. And as much as people don't understand how we can compete with them, it's a routine for them, just like they have their routine on how to do their everyday things. They have their routine for them when it comes to their job, whatever it may be. Kind of like us people, we don't always like to just sit at home and do nothing, and neither do they. So just because they may like their everyday routine at home and their daily things that they do, they get bored and going out and competing or going somewhere or just doing something different outside of their normal daily routine. It's exciting for them, and they love it, which is why I think they are so sensitive. They're way more sensitive, from what I can tell, than a horse who can see, because they don't have that sight to really rely on to know what's fully going on. So it's kind of, I feel like, an adrenaline to them, just like it is to us to try something new, especially if they know it. They love having a routine that they know is going to be fun. They know it's going to be different for the day, and they know what to do.
Absolutely. And then before we sign off here, is there anything else you'd like the listeners to know? Anything you'd like to tell somebody that just ended up with a blind horse and doesn't know what to do?
Reach out. Don't be afraid to reach out. No question is a dumb question. The only dumb question is the one you don't ask. It takes time. Not every horse that can't see is going to learn the same exact way or take the same amount of time to learn something. Some of them may never compete again, and that's okay. But there's other things you can teach them outside of maybe what you had planned, but never set your expectations too high for you or for them, and just take it step by step. And I just wouldn't be too hard on yourself.
Yeah, and that's some really good final words from you, Kalei. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your journey. It's really been awesome listening to you. I've been hanging on every word.
Thank you for allowing me to come on and share his story, and I look forward to hearing everybody else's.
Absolutely, and have a great day, Kalei.
You too.
Thank you, Kalei, for sharing your wonderful journey with Saylor with us, and thanks to our listeners for tuning in. For more information on the Blind Horse Project, feel free to take a look at our other socials, including TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And if you would like to submit a journey for the podcast or a video highlight, or if you are interested in joining the Ambassador Program, email us at theblindhorseproject@aol.com. Thanks, everyone.